I'm joined by Hoboken's third ward councilman, Michael Russo. He's currently the vice president of the governing body in the city. He has been a member of the city council since 2003, I believe, and he is seeking re-election in this upcoming November 7th election. Michael, thanks for taking the time to speak with me for a few minutes here on Hudson TV. I truly appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate being here.
All right. In your 2 decades on the city council, you've certainly seen a lot of progress and a lot of change that's gone on in the city. As we sit here today, approximately 3 weeks before Election Day, what do you consider to be, and what have you been hearing from your neighbors and your constituents in the third ward that are the most pressing issues, the most important issues in your ward right now?
Yeah, so two real big issues. One is most certainly parking. It's always been parking. People are always concerned about how they're going to store their vehicles in the city, especially those that need them on a daily basis. But the other big one is really a health concern throughout the city, and that's the rodents in town. So those are probably the two biggest concerns that I've been hearing mostly through the ward. There are some other little pockets of concerns. One being rent control and unconscionable rent increases in some of the rental buildings. But overall, I would say the rat and the rodent issue is probably the biggest across the city, most certainly affecting the third ward, mostly on third and fourth street.
Okay, let's you mentioned parking. Let's start off with that, then we'll get into the other things you
Sure.
brought up. Parking. Obviously, development goes on in the city. You need additional parking for any of those developments that might happen. What types of things can be done in the third ward to address the parking or the quote unquote lack thereof currently?
Yeah, it's really a great question. And I think the pendulum has swung from one extreme to the other, and now we're trying to find where that center of balance is. So we were very much parking focused years ago, and then that kind of shifted, and we tried to pull away from that parking focus. And we've seen that since we've done that, there's still that need. Again, we're a city of 60,000 people, and there's probably about a third of that in the population that actually need their cars on a daily basis. So we have to figure out where we could store them. Now, there are things that we can do, right? One is making sure that we are storing them correctly on our streets. I would love to delineate every parking space in the city of Hoboken so that there are specific parking spaces. I would also love to continue to explore different options for parking garages, both private and public. I think having a private and public partnership for this and many other things is actually needed, especially in a city like Hoboken, where we're pretty much landlocked.
A lot of people in the city, they don't even own cars. They bike or they walk. So you can imagine, how much more difficult it would be if those people had automobiles.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we are a progressive city in the sense that a lot of the population actually do not have cars, as you said. And when they need a car, they're using a car share program, which is a great program. They're using, Uber and Lyft. They're sharing with friends, whatever it may be. They're figuring out their way to utilize a car that they don't necessarily own. And then, of course, our public transportation, right? We're a huge public transportation hub across the state. We have ferries, we have buses, we have trains, light rail, path. It's all here in Hoboken. So I think we are unique in that sense, and we utilize that to the best of our ability as a city.
Okay, you brought up the rodent issue. Unfortunately, everyone I've spoken to has been talking about that. It's an issue that affects urban centers, of which Hoboken is. Some steps have been taken by the city council to this point. What additional things do you feel can be done to address the issue of rodents in the third ward?
Yeah, we have moved forward a little bit with the plan to eradicate the rodents. However, I think we've moved slowly. I think we need to do this as swiftly as possible. So I've said it in the past, and I'll say it again. I think we need to do this over the winter months by eliminating all of the parklets, removing them so we could clean underneath them, make sure our streets are clean as possible, remove the rain gardens on the corner, replant them in the spring. so that we don't have the rodents burrowing and making homes in those rain gardens. We should increase our garbage pickup to at least 5 days a week. Again, over a short term. This doesn't have to be permanent, but we have to eradicate the problem. There's also some extermination techniques that are out there that are not your traditional baiting. There's immediate extermination techniques. You can do that mechanically by killing rats instantly as soon as they pass under a sensor. You could do that through electrical means when they're kind of baited into a box and then they're actually electrocuted. So there's so many other ways that we could probably do this, but that has to be swift. It has to be done quickly so that we can eradicate the problem, and then by spring, hopefully not have this issue.
In addition to places such as restaurants and the parklets you mentioned, and the streeteries that are out there, development, I'm sure, plays a role in attracting the rodents out from wherever they might be when construction starts happening. Is there too much overdevelopment going on overall in the city, or in your ward, do you think?
I don't think there's too much overdevelopment. I think the development that we're actually engaged in has to be shifted, right? So we've talked about this in the past. I think the city of Hoboken is the tale of two cities, right? We very much concentrate on affordable housing for low and very low income families, and then we most certainly concentrate on market rate housing, and everything in between is kind of lost, right? So where does the middle class go? What do we do for our workforce? How do we make sure our teachers, our firefighters, our cops make sure that they can actually reside in the city that they're working in? So I think the development that we talk about is not necessarily being, the city's not necessarily being overdeveloped. I think one portion of that continuum is being overdeveloped. I think what we need to do is now spread that across the continuum to make sure we're housing all of our residents, our senior citizens, our veterans, our homeless population, our low income, our middle income, and then of course market rate housing. I think that's what we need to do. That's where our focus needs to shift so that we can keep our residents in Hoboken and they can live here comfortably.
A bit earlier, you mentioned rents. What's your concern there?
Yeah, so I mean, as you know, it's been in the news about unconscionable rent increases across the city, about the rent control issue, how we're utilizing rent control, and what that actually means. So people conflate this rent control issue with affordable housing. I think they're two very separate things. So if you're paying $5,000 a month rent, you still want to have the protection of a rent controlled unit so that your next year you're not paying $7,000 a month rent, right? It's not about the affordable portion of that rent. It's about making sure that you could plan your life accordingly so that you're not getting these unconscionable increases over time. Affordable housing is very, very different, and we are not doing enough in the city of Hoboken to make sure that we have that affordability for other areas and for other families in town, whether that's middle income or low income families.
I know you're a dad. You've got a couple of relatively young children, let's say, at this point. So I know recreation has been a big thing in your life while you've been on the council. A lot of parks have been created. You've also got the issue of flooding within the city. How bad is that issue in your ward specifically? I know you're on the western side, but you're not all the way down in the extreme southwestern area. But parks have been created. You got the resiliency parks and all of that. Just talk a little bit about the park creation and how you try to work with trying to alleviate some of the flooding issues with the creation of those resiliency parks.
Yeah, and I have four children, Jeff. So this one's near and dear to me, right? Big shout out to my children, Leah, Jack, Michelle, and Michael. Um, when it comes to recreation and flooding in particular, right? Let's talk about the field spaces that we have. Those are really major concerns for parents across the city of Hoboken. One thing that I would love to touch on, and something that we really haven't talked about a lot in the city of Hoboken, is indoor recreation spaces. We've now started to speak a little bit about the renovation of the multi-service center, and that's a great start. But I think we need more. I think we need a bigger facility so that we can have an indoor field, so that when we have weekends like we've had in the past 3 weeks, the rain does not delay a soccer program or a football program. We can move those recreational activities indoors for a bigger space. Now, the question will always be, where do we do that? Is there still space available in the city of Hoboken? And I think there is. I think the city just needs the will to go out and make sure that we have that space, or we could acquire that space. So that's the first part of that. The second part is the resiliency parks. And as you know, one of my most proud moments is when we were able to build a recreation complex in the third ward, right? We were able to acquire the Jubilee Center. We built an indoor gym. We have a very open field space at Jackson Street. We have the plaza behind the Monroe Center. And now we're talking about developing the 800 Monroe block for another park space. That's one big continuum of open space. And that was the first park, the first resiliency park built in the city of Hoboken that was detaining 1 million gallons of water. So we've been on top of this issue. We're trying to build that out as much as we can. We did it in the Northwest Park, which is now Resilient City Park. We've done it in the Southwest, in the Fourth Ward, and we're trying to do that as much as we can. Again, just the caveat there is, I think there are things that we can do that would help to aid that. We most certainly could utilize our streetscape and our sidewalks for pervious concrete and pervious asphalt to continue to detain water so that it could slowly be dissipated into the system. But these are all projects that will happen over time. When we have new developments, we could request that in those development areas. When we have new city parks being built, we could utilize the streetscape, and we could utilize the sidewalks to do that and build and increase the number of gallons that we could detain across the city. And I think that's how we do it.
Right. Councilman, we are out of time. You want to throw out some social media platforms that people can read up on your ideas?
Sure. Everybody can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter. Of course, my website is drmichaelrussonj.com. Anyone out there who needs to get in touch with me, there's multiple ways to do that. You can do that through my email, which is councilmanrusso@gmail.com, or you could call my cell phone. It's real simple. I answer text messages most of the time, and those are the fastest way to get in touch with me, and that's 201-401-9687. So by all means, anybody reach out with any concerns or questions.
Councilman Michael Russo, thank you for taking the time to speak with me about the third ward and about your reelection campaign. Good luck pounding the pavement over the next 3 weeks. Good luck on election day. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks again, Jeff. Appreciate it all.